Oh, well, I've hit record. I don't know if there's anything else you need to be able to do, but
We'll find out.
you can share your screen, can't you? Which you'll do at the end. No.
No.
Amazing.
Turned on the emojis, turned off everything else. Never mind. I'll work it out in the background.
No, I've got a plan. So you are now the host.
Can you do anything there?
Oh, now I can't share my screen. Can you make me co-host, please? This is fun. The joys of technology, eh? Here we go. Let's get into it. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we're all good.
Right. Well, it was a really good session with this group last time. We had a really good chat about the safe system philosophy. Lots of great input from everybody. Thank you. And it got us, yeah, I suppose, just sort of rethinking the way we look at road safety, or maybe reconfirming the sort of philosophy of the safe system. And then we started to look at some practical applications and how we can translate that philosophy into on-ground decision-making and actions around projects or policies or vehicle standards or anything like that. This session, we're going to get more into that road environment, and most of you are heavily work in that road environment space. So we're going to delve further into those kinetic energy thresholds. We started talking about that. We had some good analogies there. We had Usain Bolt. We had Graham, the PAC's life-size sculpture of the human that can handle the forces on the road network. But we're going to delve a bit further into that for intersections. And we're going to look at intersections in a bit of detail. What aligns highly with safe system principles and what doesn't align so highly with safe system principles. Now, you'll notice there that I say what aligns highly and what doesn't align highly. I don't talk generally about the safe system as a binary thing to say, you know, that is safe system or that is not safe system. It's kind of this philosophy, and you can have good alignment with it or not so good alignment with it. We got caught up in this, you know, we can't do that project because it's not safe system. And you go, well, you know, what does that actually mean? And or, you know, this is a safe system solution and thus it's good. And you go, well, you know, there's aspects of it that are really well aligned and aspects that don't. But anyway, I called my company Safe System Solutions, which is a bit of, you know, just jumping on that confusion of industry. But anyway, so we're going to delve further into that. How do we make that analysis of where on this spectrum of alignment does this project sit? Identify characteristics of mid-block locations that align highly with safe system principles. So mid-block being that term that is for anything that is between intersections. So I'll, mid-block locations. Don't forget to count your ollies. There, I did want to just pop this diagram up just to talk a little bit about safe system assessments as the independent assessment technique, because we do have road safety audits, and many of you are road safety auditors and or have been involved in it over many years and no doubt heard the term. Road safety audits are still an important thing. We've got design reviews, and they're just the common practice of a road designer to get somebody else with same skill sets as them to do a review, to check their calculations, check they haven't missed anything. That's just good sort of practice. Safe system assessment, sort of this entity that does a lot of what road safety audits do and a bit of what design reviews do, and a bit of stuff on their own there. Then there's a thing, safety and design, and that's, you know, can it be built safely? Can it be maintained safely, can it be decommissioned safely, and all of that. There's a lot of workplace health and safety focus to it, but there's wider stuff to it as well. And then there's some sort of, I don't know, put DDA audit, but Disability Discrimination Act. It's not called that in New Zealand, but it's, can everybody with all abilities use the facility that is going to be constructed? So that's another independent check. So you see there's quite a few of these checks, but what New Zealand is going to be moving towards, as I mentioned last time, is really to say, well, those two have some overlap, so can we combine all of that into one there? And calling that a safe system audit, sort of combining that road safety audit, safe system assessment terminology. Okay, but let's jump straight into intersections, and I do have a little task for you to do shortly, where you're going to have to do a little bit of thinking about an intersection I show you. And intersections are a really fascinating part of a network, and they certainly have the conflict points there. So we know and we think about vehicles colliding at intersections like that, but there's a lot more risk at and around an intersection than simply that vehicle-to-vehicle collision. So obviously the spot where pedestrians are going to be crossing a road, they have to be in order to get through that intersection. We also have a whole lot of fixed hazards, be that signal pedestals like that, or power poles often find themselves close to intersections due to the fact that they're going to have to either jump over the intersection in terms of the lines or turn a corner or the like. And we've got lighting columns also there. And what we find at these intersections, there's quite a lot of turbulence that happens because people, if it's signalized, sometimes they might overshoot the signals or miss the signals. If it's, if it's passively controlled with give way signs or stop signs, somebody might miss that, make a bad judgment, and then vehicles avoid, and they leave the road trying to avoid the crash, or they clip the vehicle. And so we have actually not just an increased risk of vehicle-to-vehicle crashes, but an increased risk of run-off road crashes, an increased risk of pedestrian crashes, an increased risk of bicycle crashes, and an increased risk of motorcycle crashes. So pretty much everybody's at higher risk here, and there's multiple crash types that are created just due to all of this happening. So really important part of our network for us to be really analysing what we can do about that. Now, Monash University Accident Research Centre a while back came up with some high-level principles, and we won't spend long on this, but I think it's always worth a look at a high-level sort of design philosophy or management philosophy. But interestingly, they started off with fewer vehicles and fewer intersections, and isn't that interesting? That, in terms of our exposure times likelihood times severity equation that we were just starting out on last time, those are really all about the exposure. Okay, so less exposure to crashes. Then we get into fewer conflict points per intersection. So this is like making it left in, left out, or trying to reduce some of the turn movements, or control it in different ways. That impacts the likelihood of crashes. Then we get into starting to talk about the severity of crashes, and we're talking about trying to manage speeds and angles to biomechanically tolerable levels. And they've popped some of them in here. We're talking sort of 90-degree angle crashes between passenger vehicles to be less than 50 kilometers per hour. And this is all about then the severity of crashes, isn't it? If it's somewhat reduced, the angle from that, we can go a little bit higher in speed. And this goes back to your sort of year 11 vectors. And if you sort of might remember, an angle like that, you're pushing some of the energy out into the environment as compared to an angle like that, where less of the energy is pushed out into the environment. And head-on's an interesting one, and I'll talk a bit more about that. There's not much at all pushed out to the environment. However, the vehicles are engineered in a very good way for frontal impact. Crumple zones, airbags, seatbelts, everything's operating for that frontal impact. So we're actually able to withstand higher forces. But so if you can get more angle, you're probably talking about somewhere in the 60 km/h range that is sort of generally considered within tolerable limits. This is just passenger vehicles. When we start including vulnerable road users, pedestrians and cyclists, and motorcyclists, there's some more recent research showing they're a little bit higher than pedestrians and cyclists in terms of ability to withstand force, but not a huge amount more. But we're talking about trying not to exceed that 30 km/h. And Kathy, in her a warm-up quiz question there, was pointing out the World Health Organization, talking about 30 for that possibility of death or serious injury, significantly increasing higher than that speed for pedestrians and cyclists, and there's other non-specific road safety benefits associated with these lower speeds, but yeah, that's it's a really good starting point there. And if we can't meet these speeds, we need to start thinking about redesign and altering the road system and the management of that system, so we eliminate the potential for that crash, or virtually eliminate that risk in some other way. And I'll talk to you a little bit about ways we could possibly start thinking about that. Now, I've popped lots of these tables and things, but the colorful spectrum chart that I showed last module, I think, is the important one you use in safe system assessment as a bit of a starting point, somewhere that you can look to gauge, what sort of score should we be giving to this? But you can see there 40, 50, generally okay, 60, this is for passenger vehicles, 60 km/h, somewhere in those angles between that. And that's from, well, ChemX, which is a thing called the kinetic energy management model, which as a safe system assessor, you would never need to go to that detail of using that. Well, I shouldn't say never. I mean, somebody might request a very, very, very in-depth safe system assessment, but yeah, as a safe system assessor, and I've done hundreds and hundreds of them, I've never had to use ChemX in order to determine what sort of score I'm putting on intersection crash forces. The sort of general broad brush nature of sort of that chart and some knowledge around these sorts of figures is plenty to get you to that point.
Ken, just a quick question. Does some of these figures still allow probability of serious injury, and how does that make it consistent with Road to Zero?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So these are based on fatality probability, and it is acknowledged that the aspirations we have are for elimination of death or serious injury. I have some charts on inclusion of serious injury as well. They show different results, but not astonishingly different. The fact that our curves go like this for fatals, down at these points where we can get that exponential increase drop off, serious injuries are also, pretty significantly dropped off by this point. It's not as good. Now, in a practical sense, what I say is that we are so far from managing and operating our transport system to meet the fatal curves. If we can, push hard to get to that, we're going to have just amazing step changes. So that's one thing. Like we almost being a little bit realistic in what we can aspire towards, we're going to see absolutely massive reductions in serious injuries associated with if we could start to achieve some of these speeds and angles combinations. So there's that. There's the second one is there's this sort of general acknowledgement of the roll vehicles, safety features, post-crash care, and potentially some behavioural change initiatives enforcement are going to play roles within this as well. So, we're just talking about these speeds and angles, and as we get better vehicle features and the like, we're going to be seeing these sort of curves probably shift up in their own right, but the serious injury ones come in there. So yeah, it's not perfect by no means. And I'm happy to share the serious injury sort of curve so you can get an idea of what we're seeing from that. Pretty much all the Austroads documentation and all the guidance at the moment still reflects these curves as, people will call them safe system threshold speeds or acceptable speeds or biomechanical tolerance thresholds and the like, and they still take it at that 10% off the fatal curve charts. So when you're looking at a new design of an intersection or the like, you can draw some little angles to it. Now, I would not be this precise either. It just happened that the designer that was doing this was, easily able in CAD to go, yep, they're your angles. Now, the reason I say you wouldn't need to be this precise, I mean, we know that I just go simply, okay, vehicle's coming out of here and a vehicle strikes it there. It's about a right angle. The vehicle coming along here, a vehicle coming out here, well, that's not a right angle, that's something else. So I'm saying that probably around the 60 km/h mark is what we would think of as a threshold speed, and this one around the 50 as a threshold speed for passenger vehicles. So it's as simple as that, thinking angles, thinking speeds, and that helps you then determine what's appropriate and how you might score it if you're putting scores to it within a safe system assessment. But I do want you to think about that secondary impact I alluded to. And it's kind of rare. I mean, no, this does happen. It's pretty much a direct straight hit like that. But even with those, you have the entity itself of vehicles sort of careering out that way, just the nature of where things were going. But you also do get a lot of these ones where the vehicle, avoids, clips the back of the vehicle, spins off, all sorts of, ways that these happen. And the Centre for Automotive Safety Research, plotted hundreds of secondary crash impacts where vehicles have collided in one sense at an intersection. They replotted them on this axis to see where the secondary crashes were happening, and of course they're happening out there. Well, did that research need to be done? Is that common sense? Probably, but they did it. A few, ones spinning off and clipping and going out other directions. But it does make us sort of think about fixed hazards around intersections being a genuine hazard. I was doing it was actually a review of a road safety audit. Long story, but there was a lot of debate about it, as there sometimes is, and costs associated to different people and those sort of things. But it was a signalized intersect. It was a proposal for a new signalized intersection, okay, and had a high-speed road and a lower speed road. And there was a power pole that was going to be back there. And this new road sort of had to be widened a little bit this is the low speed road. The higher speed road there. And so the audit team, picked up this as a roadside hazard. and said that it needed to be moved or protected with appropriate road safety barrier. The design has 8 signal pedestals, going in here, type 2B signal pedestals. They're not frangible. They're not going to break away. It's just that, for some reason, people just don't see that as a roadside hazard. But signal pedestals kill and seriously injure heaps of people. So it's interesting. The auditors did not make any comments whatsoever about those, but this one got picked on, which to me was like hundreds of times lower risk than the signal pedestals. But anyway, so I'd bring that up. But that's actually, interestingly, like the kind of thing that safe system assessments can inject in, because it's not about, any standards or common practice. It's just looking at it and saying, well, where's the death and serious injury going to occur? Where's the energy higher than it should be? And then they may not have ways to fix this, but at least we're putting it out there. I mean, I think the audit should have done that itself, but that's all right. Okay. So, I mean, I could talk a long time, and I will talk a long time after we do a little exercise, but I did want to get you active for a Thursday here. It's Thursday, isn't it? Yeah, Thursday here, and get you working on a little exercise. So I'm going to describe this intersection to you, and then you're going to spend a bit of time thinking about how you can redesign the intersection or the operation of the intersection or other things to eliminate death and serious injury into the future, or get us as close to elimination of death and serious injury as possible. So what this is it's a 70 km/h major arterial. It's a highway. It's on the entry to it's kind of within the built-up area of a large-ish city. It's 70 km/h. It has like 22,000 vehicles a day. That's a bus stop. It's a bus route. It takes B doubles, so large trucks. This side road is 50 km/h. It's a sort of local collector road. It has about 2,200 vehicles a day. These are service roads. They're just access to the properties. They've got some access points to the service road further up and down. This is a shared user path. This is like a drainage culvert. Sort of water goes in this way and then goes out to this sort of flood basin area. What else can I tell you about this intersection? It's there's a school down the road here, probably about 400 meters down the road. This is all residential area around it. I'll show you a bit of it from the street level. You can see there, that's that bus stop I mentioned. You can see two-way service roads there. You can see it's got a right turn facility there. You see it's got to keep clear. And that's because down this way, back towards us, about 400, 500 meters is, actually it's maybe a bit more than that. There's a set of traffic signals. And in peak times, it does sometimes bank up down here. Here's the other direction. You can see there's that sort of reserve area that can collect some of that water. There's the drain, the shared user path over there. See, it's got lighting. It's got a sort of bike lane shoulder thing. I think that's it. Now, what we're going to ask you to do is Remove fatal and serious injury, crashes, dislocation. Eliminate that into the future. You've got a budget there though, 3 million. I'm going to give you 4 million because everything's getting more expensive, so you can have 4 million. Now, some other rules. Lots of consultations being done. Closing the intersection off is just not going to work. The community won't stand for it. The school won't stand for it. And so as much as you wanted to do that, we can't close that intersection. In fact, people have to be able to enter the intersection from both directions and exit the intersection both ways. Now, you can change exactly how they do that, but that's still required. And the last one is to operate in your current political and organizational framework. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if you are doing something, very out there and you're proposing something, that's fine, but maybe give us some ideas on how you might actually genuinely get that through the current system. Get people on board with that, get it approved by your directors and different management committees and the like. So anything you come up with, any idea. So maybe, I don't know, you say improve the lighting, which would be weird because you haven't seen it at night and you don't, in the light, and there are lights there and things. But if you said that, you go, improved lighting, I would like you to put in brackets after that either E, L, or S. And in the case of improved lighting, you would put L because that reduces the likelihood of crash. Improving the lighting doesn't do anything for the severity of crashes. I mean, maybe occasional random crash is a little less severe because somebody saw something and they braked a little bit, but generally we're not slowing vehicles down and there's just the same ability for conflict to happen at the same speeds. It's just less likely to happen because people can see things. Okay, but if you might put other things that change the exposure or change the severity. So this is our first sort of little exercise to practice and start to calibrate your thinking around what is exposure, what is likelihood, and what is severity. And you'll be doing this in your assignment and then in your actual safe system assessment, and you're getting marked on it. So practice, start your practice now. So every different thing you want to change. Now, some of you are probably going, well, hang on a second. I got no idea how much things cost. Like $4 million, that sounds like a lot of money. Like what can I build with 4 million, or what can I do with 4 million? Now, some of you will go, yeah, I know how much generally things cost. And it's not about cost, cost precision here. It's just about generally, constraining you to something that is reasonable. I mean, to do like a grade separation, like a flyover and a full interchange here is going to be like $50 million, $60 million or something like that. You just simply not afford that, nor would you be doing it on an area like this. It just doesn't make sense for use of funds. So we're sort of limiting you from that perspective. But you have an instant cost estimator tool, and I am that tool. So I am ready to instantly cost estimate anything you would like, or if you've got a bit of an idea of what you think generally it would cost, use your own thinking. But all you need to do is type it in, say, whatever it is you say, how much for how much for a grade separation, and I will say $62 million, or how much for one new lighting column, and I'll say well, $33,000, including some lighting assessment and design.
Sounds super accurate, Ken.
I'm incredibly accurate with my instant cost estimator tool.
All right, can we get a cost on traffic lights, including ped cycle, please? Ped cycle.
Yep. Okay. Full signalisation of the intersection with traffic, ped and cyclist features is $3.3 million.
Ooh, in budget, terrific. What about, what's the going rate for a roundabout these days?
So a roundabout in accordance with Austroad's Guide to Road Design Part 4B. I'm having a mental blank. Is it 4B? I think it is 4B. To cater for the large vehicles is $9.1 million at this location, due to the fact that we have to acquire property, relocate services, move that whole drain, repave the area. There's a lot to do. It's well out of the budget there. Mike is going to take half the roundabout. I love that. It's innovative.
It is innovative. Cost of a signalised pedestrian crossing by the school, please.
Okay. So the school is about 400 metres up the road, but that's okay. That's all right to do. It is going to cost it's on the local road, so that's very helpful, and it's going to cost $720,000.
Love the cost estimating tool, Ken. Okay,
Well,
any other costs, or I guess
I was going to go 700, and I thought, probably going to be a little bit more than that, just because of a few little design checks and audits and consultation in school, chatting with the school. So I added an extra 20,000.
good one. Now so people are thinking about this and what treatments we can have. And when you type your treatments in, make sure you pop in EL or S for exposure, likelihood, or severity. That's good. But can we get a raised intersection cost, please?
Yeah, so raising the whole intersection, 525,000, and that's just the pavement and the drainage and line marking and signage. If you can bulk it in with other major works, we can shave a little bit off that, but not a huge amount more. So somewhere in that order.
Money left over. Good.
Sorry.
Money left over.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. We can have a good Christmas party with the leftover money, and if you're just going to raise the intersection, that's good.
Interesting. Okay. Well, any other no. I think we're okay for costs at the moment. So
okay, I'm going to give people a few minutes to jot a few ideas down. Remember to put an E, an L, or an S after each of your things.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Charles. I didn't mean to miss yours. I wasn't sure if yours was a suggestion or you wanted a cost. Okay. So how much to widen the shoulder opposite to create an additional lane width so a right turn acceleration lane could be installed next to the centre island? If you got all that, I think Charles, is Seagull? Is that what we're talking about there?
Kathy, prize to yourself.
Oh, yes.
Identifying that as a seagull. Okay, so we're going to need to do road widening. We're going to need to extend that culvert, and we're going to need to do some formation widening, and we want to transition that in. You don't want to immediately have an abrupt lateral shift. So that's going to be a $1.8 million exercise.
Okay, terrific.
You're getting a good deal on that, but yeah, I'll do that for Charles. 1.8.
Okay, what about a wide median treatment type of approach, also incorporating service road modifications?
In terms of cost?
Costs, yes, please.
Yeah, so it's not wide enough for a wide median treatment. So we could do this sort of narrow wide median treatment, which is now sort of using some odd language. In a narrow wide median style treatment, it's all going to be pretty ugly and the like, but we can do that for 400,000. If we want to make it wide enough to be like a wide median treatment, it's going to be a full 4 million, because we're starting that way further back, and it's just the civil works for that, civil works and signs and lines and the like. But you can't add any signals or anything like that. That would blow your budget.
Right. Okay. What about cost of segregated cyclist and pedestrian lanes, please?
Yeah. So it depends how you want to do it. If you want to utilize that service road for that, we can sort of do that for the extent, within this area quite reasonably, and we can do that for sort of 700,000 will give you a good kilometre of that on both sides, utilising the service road and some other widening of the footpath facility to a shared path facility, and some nice sort of connections in there, but it doesn't extend much further than that. So much bigger dollar exercise to actually connect it anywhere. Okay, let's give everybody another minute to pop some ideas in and have a think about it. But I'm seeing some good stuff.
And just to confirm, Ken, we can't close off the intersection, but we can close off the service lanes, service road. Yes,
if you want. Yep. So just reading back through some of the comments there, and it's very good. Good interaction. Love the interaction from this group.
Can we restrict the turnout to left turn only and keep the left right turn in?
We'll need some sort of way to get vehicles coming out to be able to go right, whether that's close by U-turn facility or something like that. They got very narky when we talked to the community about the idea of making this left in, left out only, and sending them all the way up to the signals down the road 400 or 500 meters, because they were talking about the fact that that takes about 20 minutes during peak hour for them to be able to go all up there, because it's heavily congested, and they would sit there and in order to go right, where they can currently go out through that keep clear and go pretty much relatively straight away. So those would be things that would have to be worked through. Okay. Well, let's give another 30 seconds. I'm seeing some really wonderful thinking coming in there already. Okay, Kathy, I think I'm going to get back into it. Must say, I'm very impressed with the comments coming in here. It's some really great thinking around this. Some really good, I suppose, logic, and obviously people who are highly experienced in the management of a road system and know what sort of things are reasonable and not reasonable with those volumes and like. So Peter's asked an interesting question in there around what is the crash history at this location. And I sort of, to a degree, intentionally didn't give you the crash history, but I'm happy to do that. Crash history is one way for us to predict risk, but it is not the only way, and sometimes it is definitely not the best way. This intersection does have a crash history though, so I'm happy to share that with you. I'm sad that there is a crash history, but I'm happy to share it with you. And the crashes are right turn against crashes, 4 serious injuries like that, passenger vehicles, and 2 right out through crashes, 2 coming out of there, passenger vehicles, all passenger vehicle crashes. There's been no vulnerable road user crashes, no pedestrians, no cyclists, no motorcyclists. That's it. Okay. Well, Kathy, I would usually, I'd usually give out a few prizes, but everybody would get a prize, I think, because such good commentary. I'm going to have to maybe give some prizes out at later stages.
Are you saying that because they're too good, they don't get a prize? Is that
too many too good?
Okay.
Well, I'd be like Oprah. Yeah, everybody wins a car.
We're not giving away cars, Ken.
Oh,
can't get any.
That was the last course, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That's
right. Okay, let's have a look through a few of them. I'm going to talk to a few of them here, but then I'm going to use this and show a few more slides. Okay. Sorry, I'm reading through all of these wonderful comments. Okay, there's a lot of discussion around there about the idea of signalising this intersection. And I can see some really, I suppose, experienced, knowledgeable people in there have talked about signals from like a perspective of unbalanced flow, just the footprint we have to work with, the way it operates, the continuity of treatment in terms of signals upstream and then signals. And, there's a lot of sort of, I suppose, sense to that. So we had some people, looking at a roundabout there. And then when I told them it was going to be $9 million, they sort of sighed and went, oh, okay, I'll go to something else. We did have somebody there throwing the idea of a smaller roundabout, which I'm intrigued by, and I might talk to that a little bit more as we tick on there. These signals, I was very impressed to see that most people were right. When we just talked about signalising this intersection, we're talking about the likelihood of crashes. People were then looking at, well, what can we do for the severity of crashes? And can we alter the speed? So somebody wanted to put in a speed camera and red light camera. And I think that's certainly a beneficial thing to do from the start, rather than wait for the red light running crashes and speed crashes to occur, and that's an interesting and good move. We had some people looking at tweaking around where the bus stop goes, and that would reduce the likelihood of crashes, and that was very well categorized there. So some people would want to say that alters the exposure to crashes, but it doesn't, because we still have the same crash potential of bus entering, vehicles coming down, and colliding with it. It's shifted where it is to possibly a spot where they're not focusing on as much. Pedestrians will still get off the bus and need to cross, and so it is just changing the likelihood of crashes and hopefully reducing the likelihood of crashes. So that was some good categorization there. Yeah, sorry, just so many good things. I might use some slides to talk to. I see somebody's asking, Peter's asking how much an egg about would cost with mountable aprons. And yeah, still, no, we'll give it to you for the 4 million egg about. So that would be I'm going to draw it so others can picture it, sort of something maybe like that. And then Peter sort of wants to make these mountable areas here, these mountable aprons, so a larger vehicle could sweep around that, but smaller vehicles would, come out and around that. I assume that's what you're sort of thinking there, Peter. Interesting little idea. Interesting idea with eggabouts. Now I'm really off topic here. We do get these high occurrence of truck rollover crashes on larger roads, and it's due to the fact that you get this big compound curve, tightening up of the radius of the curve as you make that turn maneuver, which something about it that's obviously unexpected for larger vehicles. So got to be a little careful with those, but I do like the innovation and the thinking. But let's talk about some of these a little bit more. And thank you again for that wonderful input. Kathy will read through them all there and feed me any that I sort of completely haven't talked to in either what I just talked to then or what I'm going to talk to now, which I'm taking a few of the ideas and running with them. The signals we talked about, and just really important that we understand that signals do reduce the likelihood of crashes. So clearly telling people when to go and when to stop reduces the chance that collisions will occur. Adding fully controlled right turns, the red arrow, really does a nice job of enhancing the reduction in the likelihood of crashes. But unfortunately, when you look at your network, and you can do this around any major city in pretty much anywhere in Australia or New Zealand, and quite a number of other countries, but you'll see that this very heavy dominance of death and serious injury at signalised intersections. So each of these hotspots represents, I just quickly filtered it on death and serious injury. I just randomly picked the outer suburban area of Melbourne. I could have picked outer suburban area of Christchurch or Auckland or Wellington, and what you see is just signalised intersections. That's where all your death and serious injury is occurring. Now, admittedly, the exposure is high here because we've got large arterials with lots of vehicles crossing other, sometimes large arterials or other areas. But you kind of go, well, hang on a second. What's going on here? Because there's signals, and that's kind of like seen as the ultimate form of control before you can grade separate, isn't it? Because we tend to get to that and we've signalized it, and then we've done mast arms and we've done LEDs and we've put a red light and speed camera there, and then you sort of go, well, okay, it's surely that they're now the public, they have to start obeying this and being alert to this. Well, what can we do? We've done everything right. And don't get me wrong, like I've built many signalized intersections in my time, or designed them and been involved in the development and delivery of them, and and made sure with many checks and balances that we were doing this properly. Road safety audits throughout, design checks throughout, ensuring that everything's good, getting them up, testing them out, and really, high quality. But then now I look back at them and I'm like, all right, people dying at this spot. We spent millions of dollars there. It was bloody brilliantly engineered. What's going on? And this is where we need to start to question just the fundamentals of why. Why is this happening? And why are we just continuing to build them and think that we're going to somehow miraculously do something there's going to be a different outcome? When you look at roundabouts, it's a different story. It's different in the sense that vehicles approaching a roundabout slow down. The angle of crash is improved. We are reducing the severity of crash. Now, I'm going to sort of simplify things here to a degree, in that I'm going to talk about passenger vehicle crashes here. And I'm going to sort of hold pedestrians and cyclists for next module. And pedestrians and cyclists around roundabouts, they're very interesting, fascinating, and what we can do and how that all operates. Passenger vehicle crashes. When we have a roundabout, it reduces that by somewhere in the order of 80% compared to a give way or stop sign controlled intersection. When we put traffic signals in, we know it's somewhere in the order of 40, 45, maybe 50% reduction in crashes. Look at a significant difference. Now, when I say reduction in crashes, I'm talking about reduction in fatal and serious. So we'll still get crashes occurring at roundabouts, but the severity of them is far lower. Some of you, though, are so knowledgeable that you went, well, a roundabout kind of won't work at that location that we had up there. Well, I gave you the cost of it, and you can see the footprint on this roundabout. It's huge, isn't it? It's massive. We would have need to take houses out and move that drainage structure and move all the services and lots of pavement. Some of you also sort of understood unbalanced flow of vehicles, sort of vehicle theory, traffic flow theory, that if you have a really dominant flow at a roundabout, it's going to mean that one leg just ends up banking and banking and banking and banking and never gets out. But interestingly, you can kind of cater for some of this. And I'm a big fan of metering roundabouts, which is where you put sort of signals, traffic signals there. And then, as the bank of traffic builds up down this road, you can have a sensor in the ground there, and it goes, okay, there's enough of a queue here, puts up a red signal there. Now, you could have it as a pedestrian cyclist crossing point as well, which is kind of cool because you can nicely get the peds and bikes through there, and everybody wins. Sometimes you can just have it as a single, so you don't have an actual crossing point, so you can just block off one of the stop one of the carriageways, which helps with the fact that vehicles are going to come out and they're going to go into there, and it's going to, yeah. But anyway, I mean, they're into the details now, but we don't need to dismiss roundabouts because of unbalanced flow. We just need to think about how we can tweak and manage them. Isn't that interesting? Like, roundabouts for passenger vehicles are highly superior to a set of traffic signals, aren't they? Why does it need to be as big as we were talking about? And we see there the this roundabout is huge, and Why is it so big? Well, it's so big because a large vehicle needs to be able to turn and have their swept path there. The specifics of roundabout design fascinating, and I'm very excited for the road safety conference in Christchurch coming up, because I see Axel, who's in this course, is going to present on some design specifics of roundabouts and radial roundabouts versus tangential roundabouts, and I think it's a wonderful conversation. I think I'm chairing that session, so that should be wonderful. Or I'm presenting in it as well on a different roundabout topic, but it'll be fun nonetheless. We won't get into all of those specific details, but I do want to say, well, why do we need such big roundabouts? Here's a nice little UK roundabout, isn't it? Now, is this going to do anything for road safety benefit? A lot of people would be saying, no, it's not going to do anything. There's no deflection, there's no change. But there is a very important little thing for us to understand, is that somebody approaching this intersection, nobody approaching this intersection believes they have ultimate priority. But no matter where you're coming from, there is a chance that you will have to give way. Compare this to just a give way. One leg just believes they have ultimate priority. And even with a set of traffic signals, when it's green, or even the geometry of it just gives that feeling of ultimate priority. And that's where we get some trouble. So everybody approaching this will slow down and be a little more alert to the fact that they might have to give way. I'm not saying that this is going to be perfect, but for the cost of the, little bit of paint, it's a pretty attractive thing to get that benefit. It's kind of the UK's equivalent of a four-way stop, isn't it? And I think we need to start sort of having a think about disrupting that feeling of ultimate priority at these high-risk locations or higher risk locations. People worried about that straight run high speed through there. Well, you can think about raised platforms and slowing vehicles down in this way as well. And back to some sort of road safety engineering 101. I mean, roundabouts versus signals, we have less conflict points. There's just less ways to crash. Now, I'm still talking passenger vehicle to passenger vehicle at this stage, but these dots represent ways that you can crash. And the red dots are crossing crashes, which are generally the higher severity crashes that we're very concerned about. There's 16 of those in the signalized potential there. The crash angles, and we talked about angles and vectors earlier, and energy, and this is better energy going out there. It's going to be a better crash, that angle. And this is the one sort of back to a little bit of that ultimate priority, but there's some lots of work that's been done from around the world as to why are people running red lights, and what can we do to disrupt that and wake them up. And it's amazing then the amount of red light running that occurs, and it comes in varied forms. We might think of red light running as people intentionally running the red light. It's orange, and then they put the foot down and it goes red and they continue through. Okay, that occurs. They're fully aware there's a signalized intersection there. But there's a lot of people who are driving half asleep, worked a double shift, they're slightly intoxicated, and they just don't register the signals because the road geometry continues straight, everything continues straight, they're driving along and they just miss it. And I reckon some of you don't need to tell us in the chat or put your hand up, but would have driven through a red light. You would have gone, oh my God, did I just look at a red light? It happens a lot of pedestrian crossings, actually mid-block crossings, because there's less geometric clues to the driver. But so yeah, it happens a lot. And yeah, something that we need to start factoring into our design thinking and decision making. How do we wake these drivers up? They don't do the same at roundabouts. Physical infrastructure in the middle of the road and the geometric changes we see, horizontal geometry changes. They come back to it. They wake up. They look around. They slow down. Very, very occasionally, somebody will run straight through a roundabout. There's videos of it on YouTube and things occasionally, but it is so rare in the scheme of things compared to traffic signal running, red light running. So before I go into that, Kathy, I reckon it's quite close to our time where we want to have a quick stretch break. It reminded me, Kathy, of it was back in the road safety department, and I showed this to a recent group and got some comments. People like to see that. It was a memo that well, I'll give the backstory of it after we have a little break, and I'll find the document during the break, if that's all right, Kathy.
Leaving us on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, that's right.
Come on, come back after the break. Love it. And that last discussion there on people, and Mark's commented, people drive on automatic. It makes me wonder, with the more driverless features that you have in your car, the less attention you have to pay to doing things when you're on the highways and so on.
But the more likely that your car's going to stop when it sees a red light. So that's a bonus, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. No, it's going to stop if it sees a car in front of you at the red light. But if there's no, anyway, too much detail to get into. But yeah, how long for a break, Ken?
Just 2 minutes. I've got a lot to cover. So just stretch, fill your water up, and we'll get back there in 2 minutes.
Okay, great.
I have to find this document. Okay, Kathy, I think I might get back into it. Now, the background or the document I was trying to grab. So I was working in the road safety department of the Victorian government, and there was this big congestion easing program that was being developed, like the biggest congestion easing program of all time. I think it was called Keep Melbourne Moving, and it was traffic engineers that analysed the network and done lots of modelling and identified spots that are congesting the network, and were coming up with projects to alleviate that. And these projects were being designed up, and then that part of the process was sent to the road safety department for us to undertake road safety audits on those. So we were independent and doing the audits of them and looking at those jobs, and the jobs were coming in and we were doing the audit, and there was just a lot of projects that were removing roundabouts and replacing with traffic signals. And so they were coming in with the expectation that we would review the signal phasing, the line marking, the alignment and the lighting requirements and all of those usual things, and making commentary and checking all of that, which we did. But we also started to put these memos on these documents. Oh, no, I've shared the wrong screen. Sorry.
The suspense is building.
Yeah. Oh, how come that's done that? I think somebody's question is, was this for capacity? Yes, it was a capacity program. And because you do get a bit more capacity out of an intersection if it's signalized than you do if it's a roundabout. But anyway, so we started doing this, and I grabbed one of these before leaving as a little sample. So from the road safety department, blah, blah, blah. The road safety department has analysed this project as increasing crashes as follows. Project life, 20 years. You've got to give a life to a project to, do any sort of analysis on it. Number of deaths attributed to this project, 2.3. Number of serious injuries attributed to this project, 12.6. put little people next to it just to reinforce, okay, you're going to kill some people doing this. And then this sort of statement of acceptance. The above trauma is accepted by regional manager, regional director, who's managing that area. And so we'd do the audit and we'd put this on top of it and their project and send it back. And yeah, so, okay, did we get any of these returns signed? No. Did we get some very angry regional managers calling to tell us that we don't understand what managing a road network's about, and that there's getting people home earlier and all the competing demands of the network and our appropriate balancing of these things, and sort of go, well, yeah, I understand there's important things to do there, but well, let's not hide from the fact that we're going to kill and seriously injure people. And somebody just stands up and say, it's more important to get people through this intersection, a few seconds quicker than it is to, ensure our community safely gets through there. And it is. It's just that question of where do your priorities lie? Now, as soon as jurisdictions sign up to the SAFE system, they sort of should have committed to prioritizing safety. That's a fundamental. We don't trade off human life for other human life and health for other values. And anyway, so those were taken away. But one of the reasons I bring that up is that nowadays you don't need to be as sort of aggressive as those memos, and you can do it with safe system assessment to a degree. It does the same thing without as much, maybe conflict. So interesting experience with that. I've shared the same one, haven't I?
It was pretty good, Ken. Pretty good.
Not having great luck with the technology today, am I?
Oh, that's okay.
I think
where do we get all the money from to alter all the at-risk intersections?
It's a good question. It's not like we're going to do it in a 1-year program or a 5-year program. It's going to be progressively rolled out, and so you've got to have some metrics to work out which are the most risky. But I think that some people were putting in there things like REORs, lower cost treatments. We're going to see lower cost treatments coming down from that perspective, and we can, over time with big programs, chip away at the highest risk ones and then the next highest risk ones with appropriate treatments. It does take us rethinking, I think, what we accept at intersections. But certainly for me, I think a great start is the fact that let's not build any ones that are going to just have a decent amount of death and serious injury from the get-go. So we're going to spend 5 million or 3 million or 10 million on intersection changes. Let's do it in a way that virtually eliminates death and serious injury in the future. So that's a nice start. That money was going to be spent anyway. And then we can look at large safety programs and roll out and changing these features. Just a little bit more on roundabouts. And I mean, it's not, I'm not going to harp on this, but I find it interesting also the way we do 2-lane roundabouts, which we know aren't quite as good. They're still better than a signalised intersection for passenger vehicle crashes, and certainly for, they cause a lot of trouble for cyclists. But 2-lane roundabouts and then turbo roundabouts. So let me explain what a turbo roundabout is. So a turbo roundabout is where you have a raised separator on the approach and through the circulating carriageway. So these are, concrete separators. So if you want to turn right, you sort of get into that right lane, you get in, and then you come around and out you go. And, if you want to go straight, we can do it from either lane. a nice sort of radial style roundabout there. So you can tell it's out of Europe. And yeah, these perform as well as single lane roundabouts from a safety perspective. They're quite extraordinary from that sense. And I think they're really quite impressive. Look at the bike facilities as well. It's fantastic, but that's the next module. Here's another turbo roundabout. And I just love this. I just love this photo from this perspective, just seeing what's going on here. We've got a potential conflict, but you just know that it's not going to be severe, don't you? So even if that white van hits that truck, we know that the white van is going to be going slow because they've had to come in here and slow down. They're fully aware of the intersection. They're quite alert. We know that. The angle of crashes, beautiful. They're just going to flip it and carry on. If this was a mistake made, I mean, this is a mistake made, it looks like by the truck, at a give way or even a signalized intersection, the angles would be worse, the speeds would be worse. Anyway, so there's some turbo roundabouts to get you going. And this one is fascinating. And this is out of the Netherlands, and you might look at it and your jaw might drop and say, oh my God, at this. But it's interesting. I was talking to a Dutch engineer, and we had them over to do some bikes at roundabout sort of workshops and things like that. And I showed this to him and said, oh, I just think this is amazing. And, this is huge land area. And yeah, looking at what it is in Australia and New Zealand, we probably have this as a large signalized intersection. It might have got to grade separation, but probably most likely large signalized intersection. And the Dutch engineer said, oh, okay, with speed platforms or something to reduce speed. And I was like, no, probably not. And he said, like, well, but what about all the death and serious injury to your community? How could you possibly justify that? I'm like, yes, you're right. It's so strange. And they would rather do this sort of thing. And in fact, there's no even thought of having this as a high-speed, large signalized intersection. This is signalized, and I don't think it would be as complicated on the ground. I've never actually driven this, but I don't think it'd be as complicated on the ground as it looks from up here. It's fascinating, but that's that very different culture, isn't it? But it's nice to see that some of these large signalized intersections, which just continue to come in at the top, in the top 10 death and serious injury in jurisdictions, and people just go, well, we've done everything we can there. Like, we'll go look at the ones with a couple of crashes, and but they're looking at, can we change them? Can we alter them? Can we take some of the features that we know are good from roundabouts or from other treatments and integrate those into these large signalized intersections without compromising as much of the things as we're trying to get out of these large signalized intersections? I like these mock-ups, the cut-throughs. This is a mock-up. It hasn't been built, but the idea being that, a vehicle coming in here sees, physical infrastructure, slows down, improves angle. We still get lots of good capacity through it with the injection of these turn facilities. So these sort of things, I think we're going to have to re-look at how we operate these large signalized intersections, because they're not going to get us close to zero death and serious injury. A few of those. There's the Squircle, they call that one, more compact one. But I was really happy to see that a number of people here were talking about raised safety platforms or raising the intersectional light. Now, that intersection we were looking at, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or 20 years ago, if we started talking about vertical deflection raised, we would have been laughed at and, kicked out of the design office, because you would never raise a major arterial like that, because that's where the buses go, the freight goes, it's about pushing vehicles through at high speed. But we've evolved from that. We've moved on from that. And we know that some sort of raised features can be really beneficial in giving us some of that benefit we want in waking up drivers, slowing drivers down at these critical points. And they address the severity of crash. So that's what they proposed at that one that you were looking at. Because they came to a similar conclusion as many of you, that signals were probably going to operate far better. But they knew that up the road, they got signals and there's death and serious injury. And in fact, they looked at their city and they said, well, our top 50 areas for death and serious injury are signalized. So, there's more we can do when we build this next one, and stop just saying, well, maybe this one will be different. And yeah, so they managed to come up with this design with raised safety platforms, not urban speed humps, but platforms to reduce the speed of these bullet vehicles, right? They only need them here on a T intersection and here, because they're the only vehicles they're trying to reduce the speed of. The vehicles coming in and out they're not the bullet vehicles. They're not going at the speed to do the damage. They're the target vehicles. And what they did is they thought, okay, well, we're predominantly interested here in this right angle crash. So let's try and get speeds to 50 kilometers per hour or below. Now, it'd be nice to see it go, lower than that, to think about pedestrians and cyclists. Good start from the usual operation of it continuing at 70 kilometers per hour. So there you go, they built it. They put 50 kilometer per hour speed advisory. They tried to get the ramp grades appropriate for 50 kilometer per hour. And I can give you some good information on ramp grades if you're interested in that. You can see it there, and it's built. I was out there doing some post-opening road safety auditing of it with a colleague, and took this photo, and I love this photo. Green light, vehicle slowing down. And this is somewhat frustrating to traffic ops people, and they vocalize that. This is inefficient. This is, why are we slowing all these vehicles down for these, very small chance of being involved in an incident? And I was like, if we had the money to build a roundabout there, would people be arguing, jumping up and down about the fact that we're slowing vehicles down on the approach and through the intersection? No, I mean, it's just that this is new and people don't like new stuff and different stuff. But I think that that's, a wonderful win. We talked about the risks here. The risks are high. We've got not just these risks, but all the risks of all the poles and the pedestals and the signals and all the chaos that happens. We have the point where the pedestrians and cyclists are crossing. We should be slowing people down at this point. Another little cool outcome of this also was reduction in the dilemma zone. Now, the dilemma zone is that period in time and space where you are in a dilemma as to whether you put the foot down and go through the orange, or you brake and stop. And the presence of a raised platform significantly means more people are stopping. And so the dilemma zone, isn't that a great, whoever named that deserves a prize of some description. It's exactly what it is. You're in a dilemma, but it reduces that because people are going to stop because you have to navigate over something. There's some more road safety wins. And New Zealand is certainly on this raised intersection bandwagon, and I'm hoping to see a huge amount more. You've got your high-profile one out there in Hamilton, Gordon. I'm forgetting what the other road name is. Somebody will pop it into the chat, and that's it. There, it's built. and worth a look next time you're in Hamilton, if going out and having a look at it. And it's, as I understand, operating really quite well. So I think that this is going to help us significantly in the future. And this example here is a large intersection. 54,000 vehicles a day on Dalton, and 29,000 vehicles a day on Childs Road. There it is again. And I just absolutely love the fact that this used to be a roundabout. It was being replaced with traffic signals for congestion easing under another congestion easing program, 15 years later, 12 or the like. But a safe system assessment was done. The safe system assessment, using the sort of fairly simple methodology showed there would be more chance of death and serious injury for passenger vehicles as a result of the installation of the traffic signals, and suggested that measures be looked at to reduce the speed of vehicles through the conflict points, such as road safety platforms, and they took it on. So there we go. We got the outcomes we're looking for. There's a little bit more work to do on getting ramp grades exactly right, and maybe making the ones on slip lanes a bit slower than that. But the overarching principles are really good. And there's some good guidance now available to us. So there was Victorian Government road design notes that has been published, and some really good stuff in there. There's the Austroads document, Effectiveness and Implementation of Road Safety Platforms, which was done by fantastic New Zealanders, and is a wonderful resource and document. There you go. It's got a picture of the Hamilton one there on the front cover, and I think it's worth us looking to. So, but the idea isn't that it's this is the treatment you should always do. The principle of how we arrive there, to question that high speed through conflict points and look for ways to address that, is what we want to focus on, what we want to grab. Kathy, any questions or comments for me to deal with at this stage?
Ken, so many, hard to keep up, but thank you everyone for your interaction. So Axel has mentioned there's an Austroads research report, and we've put all of these in the Module 2 section in the Learning Management System, so easy access for everyone, as well as a webinar on road safety platforms that was delivered last year, probably. I can't quite remember, the years all go into one another. Yeah, I think that's about it for the moment. Where are you traveling to next? As in,
in the slides?
Yes, that's the one.
This is, I won't spend long on this, but again, it's taking that principle of high speed conflict point. What can we do about it? And so this is an intersection that did have a crash history. Is high speed. It was 100 km/h roads. They did some speed limit reductions to try to calm things down, but it wasn't working that well. They did all these little tweaks, rumble strips on the approach, and then they said, well, we need to try and do something more fundamental here. Let's look at a roundabout. The roundabout, and they did some early concepts of the roundabout. They were taking this massive footprint required, and this is a telecommunication exchange building, so moving that was going to cost over $1 million on its own to move that, let alone acquiring all the land and then all the civil works and the drainage and the lighting, and it was just going huge. And so then they were reverted back to, okay, well, we'll just do a right turn lane, and that'll help, and that'll reduce the chance of crashes, and maybe we'll look at some rural intersection activated warning signs. And I think these are good treatments, but they really, are they going to eliminate death and serious injury? They'll bring things certainly down, but this one had particularly high risk sort of elements. It was high on the list that they wanted to do something about. And there you can see it there. And so they went back and said, well, what about a smaller roundabout? And somebody had mentioned this early on. What about one of these? Why do we need to be so big with that roundabout? Why do we need to do the reverse curves on the approach? So reverse curves, for those that don't know, is where you sort of chicane people in, you slow them down using these reverse curves, eat up people's land there. And I said, well, could we do the slowing down with raised platforms again? Could we have a very small roundabout with a big concrete apron? So it's looked at. And this is where we get into sort of compact roundabouts and still trying to get that same outcome or very close to at a lower cost. And I can happily send you the detailed design of this, but some really innovative design thinking in this. And that one was built, and you can see, I mean, shallow raised platforms on the approach, slow vehicles down, kind of operates like reverse curves, but in the vertical sense. And then this roundabout in the middle, big concrete apron. You can see a very small roundabout, actual raised bit where I've got that red dot, and then the big concrete apron. I mean, the roundabout itself is only that big. Didn't have to move that. That's good. Still, it's about half the cost of a full-size roundabout. So that's still not, you're not getting them super cheap, but you get it, it's far cheaper than a full-size roundabout. So I think it's good. And they present a paper on compact roundabout design at the conference in Christchurch. So that'll be good. I'll give some specifics. It gets a little bit annoying from a design perspective. I'll work out. You can't put lights in the roundabout, and you'll think about these raised platforms and drainage and swept paths and bits and pieces. But yeah, I think a lot of potential there. So it's always nice to have some drone footage of one. It gets everybody excited. Okay, quick quiz, Kathy, and then I'm going to just move through some stuff quickly to give us time to introduce the little exercise for people. Okay, hopefully that pops up on your screen. True or false? Traffic signals are not safe system. True, false, or unintelligible question. Unintelligible question meaning like, that doesn't make sense. You haven't given me enough information or context. What are you talking about, Ken? So I'll let you ponder that.
Ken, we had a question earlier, which I didn't quite get to. You talked about New Zealand moving to a road safety auditing process with the safe system assessment. What was it? A
safe system audit? Safe
system audit, terrific. So what sort of things would be included in a road safety audit, but not the traditional, maybe in a safe system audit, but not the traditional road safety audit?
Nothing. Everything you do in a road safety audit and everything you do in a safe system assessment mashed together. If the two overlap, you may be able to not do it twice, but it's everything.
Terrific. Thank you. All right, I'm going to end that one. And
oh, we got it almost even across the board. And that is fair enough because I didn't give you any context. And so maybe some of you who said true had a particular context in mind. Some of you said false, said, well, hang on a second. It's not the traffic signals that are not safe system or safe system. It's, what context they're in and the like. And those who said unintelligible questions got to that point and said, well, you haven't given me any context. You also said that you don't like to say safe system is binary, like not safe system. So that doesn't make any sense. So unintelligible question. I would have leaned to unintelligible question, but I can see why people may have gone to true or false. Why do I put that question into this? because I've had people walk out of this course occasionally and said, we can't do traffic signals anymore because they're not safe system. Like, okay, that wasn't our intention here. It was to say, question things within their context about energy, speed, and understanding that just because there's a red light there doesn't mean everybody is going to stop. I mean, we'll have humans making mistakes. So we need to think about the management of energy as well as trying to reduce the chance of crash. Thank you. Lane departure. Okay. We got a lot of long, relatively straight roads that operate at high speed across New Zealand. We also have windy roads that operate at high speed. A lot of them are separated by a centre line. Maybe have sealed shoulders. What we see is just a huge amount of people leaving their lane and then crashing into trees, power poles, or head-on crashing. And we don't see this particularly clustered. We just see this throughout routes. And you have little places where there's increased risk, but generally throughout a whole route, there is a level of risk that just sits there, and it's just a matter of when somebody falls asleep, when they get distracted by something else, when they drop their coffee in their lap, when they look around at the kid who's thrown up, or whatever it is. You know, the list of reasons why people will leave their lane is endless. So it's really quite a challenge because of the expansive network we have. And just huge amounts of New Zealand roads sit in this sort of separated by white line or yellow line, and hazardous roadsides, and energy far beyond what we can possibly handle if those two collide at the speed that they're going. We talked about that speed of impact, and that threshold speed, 29 kilometers an hour, now up to 32 kilometers an hour. But that's all the vehicle's side is really designed to handle. And if we've got trees and power poles and the like, we're in huge trouble as people leave the road. They desperately try and get back on the road when they wake up. As a result, they start to yaw, so they slide, exposes the side of the vehicle to crashes. And we know that it's far beyond what humans can possibly handle. In fact, here's a little video that is being sort of looked at and analysed, that it predicted about at a 60 kilometre per hour impact speed. Now turn away if you need here. I mean, the violence of that, the energy of that is just staggering. Like, it is absolutely unsurvivable in terms of the forces. And it is predicted at 60 kilometers an hour. And this is like just devastating to see. Crashes, and New Zealand's had plenty, and a recent one in Australia here, and 4 young people just killed instantly like that, hitting a tree. There's no possible way they can survive at these speeds. So if we clear out these hazards, if we clear them out, are we going to eliminate all the death and serious injury? Well, the answer is no. We're going to do a pretty, we're going to reduce that risk significantly. But we introduce rollover risk, okay? More rollover risk because you got more space. Now, you would take rollover risk over fixed object risk because far less energy transfer, but it's not perfect. Now, I won't go into this in detail, but I will say that we know that creating these clear zones reduces run-off road casualty crashes, but then it sort of asymptotes out of it somewhere in there, a bit above 4. So two things with clear zones. Clear zones are certainly good at reducing risk in these first bit. They are very practically hard to ever achieve. Maybe on new roads, it's impossible to achieve. But if you have an existing road environment, it's got trees that you're not allowed to remove, it's got cultural heritage, it's got massive service relocation costs. And then you've got cuttings and huge works to do that. So it's sort of practically unachievable. But now we know that there is actually a safer way to manage the roadside if you can do it. I'll jump through that. So clear zones, we say, are not necessarily a safe place to be. People will go beyond whatever clear zone is created. There's rollover risk. It does some pretty good benefit in 4 to 5 meters. But we wouldn't be building new roads like this anymore with these big, calculated clear zone and then all these fixed hazards outside that clear zone. Big wide medians, probably those wouldn't be there, but calculated clear zone. The reason for that is, take this road, which as of 2 or 3 years ago, 3 years ago, this is exactly how Austroad's design guide would have told you to design a new town bypass. Well, actually not with the truck rumble strips, but it's going to jump me out of that, isn't it? But with the clear zone and big wide median. Now we know people shoot across these and a tragic incident in New South Wales after the opening of one of their major $1 billion Pacific Highway upgrades. And it was 2 months after it. Big wide median like this, the vehicle goes across, hits another vehicle. There was 5 people killed, family going this way. And you're like, you go, what on earth? Like, how could we possibly spend $1 billion to create this new bit of infrastructure? And then within that quick amount of time, 5 people killed. Imagine if a train line did that. Like, the train line would be just stopped. They'd be shut down. But the road is that's what happens. Anyway, so we've got some new guidance on this. We've got the new Part 6, Guide to Road Design, reassesses how we think about roadside and roadside risk. And acknowledges, I suppose, the amazing advancements in road safety barrier technology. And we have seen huge benefits and huge gains in recent times. And nowadays, it is sort of the safest, the highest alignment with safe system principles are continuous barrier systems, flexible barrier systems. And you don't need those big wide medians because as long as you've got appropriate deflection zones and the like, we are in the safest territory. I mean, people would call it the bumper bowling of roads. I'm perfectly happy with that as a name for these. If anybody leaves the lane, they are contained within that envelope. And that's a sort of little mock-up of alignment with safe system principles. You got some interesting variations of what gives you better safety outcomes on volume in different configurations. But yeah. The details of design of these is, there's some specifics, and you've got to think about, catering for people breaking down and making phone calls and needing to change the kids' nappy or whatever it is. And you can sort of get a little bit caught up in just what the research and evidence shows only. Like, that is super important. But this one, for example, we know that it's actually lowish risk, and we could get far more barrier out without creating these blocking these areas to pull over. But the community really didn't agree with that, and we were forced to do some very expensive retrofit works. So just thinking about details of the design. The last one, I think, before I hand over to Kathy to take you through an assignment, is just again, thinking about energy management, energy redirection and the like, and this particular crash that happened in Mildura country town, 4 young male passengers at 2 a.m. I mean, the scenario is all too familiar, and that's lots of stuff we need to do in other elements of the system to try and reduce the occurrence of that scenario. But when the vehicle left the road and hit a power pole, and this is scarily similar to the one that's just happened in New South Wales, the pole had a raptor cushion on it. A raptor cushion is this thing. It sort of cushions, but it also rotates. And the idea is that the energy of the vehicle is sort of pushed along as it hits it, just due to that sort of design of it, that the energy is moved along. And the vehicle sort of continues if it's hit at that, and it cushions it a bit. Now, I'm not, particularly saying this is, get out there and buy this product. I don't have no allegiance to this product, but I love the idea of trying to think about management of energy in these tricky scenarios where we don't have enough space to put a barrier system. If you've got space to put a barrier system, it's far superior every time. But I think this is a really unique and nice way to think about energy management. And that's the big thing, is we have a lot of the time in the past forgotten to really focus our attention on severity. And we've thought that, we can continue to work on the likelihood. Let's work on both, and exposure if we possibly can. Let's not do that quiz, Kathy. Let's just show them the assignment, maybe answer any questions that are still to come.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ken. Oops, there's my emails. Okay. Jumped ahead. Right, so we're in module 2, and thank you to everyone who jumped in and did the quiz in module 1. If you haven't done that, do get on and do that. We do have a quiz again for module 2, and we also have a very short assignment to get you practicing what is exposure, likelihood, and severity. All the guidance that you've mentioned throughout today's webinar, Ken, as well as there's a bonus, an Australia's Road Safety Platform webinar link in there as well. So that might be a bit small. There we go. So, ooh, hello. So that's all in there for you as well. So you can have another look. So if you jump into the assignment, there it is there. And you do get 3 attempts, and it is due in 4 days and 7 hours. And you just add your submission here once you've done it. But here is the assignment here. And basically what we're asking you to do is find an intersection, any intersection, one that you're familiar with, ideally. So something outside your house. You don't have to actually go and visit it. You just have to inspect it via Street View or using your existing knowledge. And then what we want you to do is complete any of the highlighted sections. So here it says your name. You insert your name in there and insert the link to your intersection Street View in here, so we can also have a look at it. And then over the page, and we're looking for factors that increase or influence exposure, likelihood, and severity. Minimum 1 factor, maximum 3. We don't need you to write pages and pages, because Ken doesn't have time to review pages and pages. And then we're looking for 1 change that would reduce the impact on exposure, likelihood, and severity. And Ken, you might go into a bit more detail there. So very, very short, sharp, nothing that you need to spend hours mulling over or anything like that. Just 15, 20 minutes. And if you're struggling, please get in touch with us.
Yeah, so remember the purpose of this assignment is to ensure that you've got your head around the classification of exposure, likelihood, and severity. We're interested in ensuring, it's good road safety thinking and the like, but it's about classification. So I can just quickly give an example of a hypothetical intersection, and I go, exposure is influenced by the large number of pedestrians crossing to get to the shopping centre, the large number of cyclists coming off the cycle path crossing to get to the shopping centre. And then the likelihood is influenced by the fact that this is controlled by a give way sign only, that there's low visibility out of the side road, and that there's poor lighting. And the severity is influenced by the speed of vehicles on the main road and the percentage of heavy vehicles that are there, because they're more going to create more severe crashes. An exposure could be, how do I change exposure? Well, we're not limiting you on anything here. I'd say, well, okay, we're going to create a pedestrian cycle underpass from the end of the shared path under to the shopping centre. Okay, it's going to cost a heap, but hey, that shows that I understand what exposure is, because now they're not exposed to the crashes there. And likelihood, we're going to build curb build outs to open up sight lines coming from the side road. And severity, we're going to reduce the speed of bullet vehicles on the approach through speed limit reduction or raised platforms, or we're going to put a roundabout in, or these sorts of things. So have a look at your intersection. Feel free to not be constrained by all of those real world constraints of cost and practicality and community sentiment. Just show us you understand exposure, likelihood, and severity. We would like you to try to do things you think are possible and reasonable, but don't get too fixated on that aspect of it. Just show us you understand exposure, likelihood, and severity. Of course, if you have any questions, get in contact and should be able to do it quickly. You don't need to go to a site for this one. You could do it on Street View. And hopefully you can knock it off very quickly. There is a quiz for today, isn't there, Kathy?
Yep, there certainly is. So once you've done that, if you can save it as a PDF and then add the submission here, that would be great. If Word document's fine as well, PDFs just make it easier sometimes. So add your submission, and we'll have a look at those before the start of next session. And Ken, I think you give a big prize away for somebody who might want to talk through their intersection.
Yeah, so at the start of next session, we'll ask for a volunteer and then we'll dive into their intersection via Street View, and they can talk us through how they've analysed it. And yeah, it's usually pretty good. So that's where we'll utilise the fact that you can put your hand up and we give you the ability to talk to us, which is nice.
Absolutely.
I think we're going to give people 5 minutes to jump in there, get their quiz, and even start that, eh?
Yeah, for sure. Any questions? We okay? There's no questions. I think we're good.
Chomping at the bit to get into it.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Ken. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you next Tuesday.
See you next week. Bye.